This is Dr. V, the burnout expert, and I'm talking to Angela Avery today. And Angela, I know you had an experience with burnout yourself. And yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Well, for me, it's really literally burn out because in 2017, there was a wildfire in the area that I live, and it destroyed my home completely, but also 5,000 other homes. And so, as a whole community, we experienced burnout and we went into shock. We walked around like zombies. We didn't know what the next thing to do was. And the community is still healing really from it.
Oh, wow. That is like going to severe trauma. So you have, this is kind of I mean, I don't have much experience with people who've been through a fire like that, but I assume it's very close to post-traumatic stress syndrome, what you're going through.
I think it was, yeah.
So like an emotional burnout almost also, because you lose you lose a lot of things that are part of you and that you care for. You hopefully didn't lose any people.
Uh, we didn't, though. I know 24 people died in the fire, and there were some pretty horrific stories.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the pets, we were able to save the pets, so that's really important.
Yeah, they're part of the family.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So what are your symptoms actually? So how do you experience this? Because this is 2 years
Well,
ago.
yeah, it was 2 years ago almost. Um, Really, at first, I remember going to, I worked for the county, and we were, as county workers, we're disaster workers. So we are supposed to go help in the shelters.
Mm.
And the morning after, my house burned down at 2 a.m. The whole half the block was gone by 2 a.m. And at 4 a.m. I was trying to get to work because I knew that a fire of this magnitude would mean that I would need to report to work.
Wow.
And for the first day, I went into a shelter, and there were so many county people there that all the mundane tasks were all filled, and I thought I need to really make good use of my time here, um, since I have to be here instead of fixing my life. And um, so I went around and I witnessed, and I sat with individual family groups and asked them not only how they were doing, but if they wanted to share their story, and then I would share my story. And it was my little way of trying to build a sense of community because when in a major disaster, when you land in a shelter, you're so removed from all the comforts and
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
just doing what I could. But after that, I remember um, for weeks after, I'd go to work every day, and I had this deep need to be productive
Hmm.
because I felt like there was such a void in my life that if I had to spend hours at work, I had to make those count.
Mm.
And so I pushed myself really hard at work in order to um, do big projects, get things done.
Do you think it had something to do with you kind of needed a reason because you were the one who survived and you kind of need to feel like I deserve to be alive? So therefore I need to make a big difference.
You know, I don't recall having that feeling.
Okay.
That make a big difference is like a part of
Yeah.
who I am naturally. And so
Yeah, because I remember when I mean, you didn't tell me your experience with being in a fire, whether you ever were scared of losing your life.
not really. When we pulled away from the house, the streets were fairly empty.
Okay.
We chose to drive north, which apparently was the right choice because if we had turned left and tried to go south, we would have been in terrible traffic with the fire bearing down on us, and
Oh,
that would have been really scary. And I know many people who had that experience.
okay.
Um, but for us, it was like, no, we just drove to a relative's house and stayed there.
Okay. All right. I mean, your story is a bit different from most people who get burnout syndrome that I talk
Yeah.
to. Um, but because I was thinking about when I almost drowned in the ocean, and I kind of felt I was saved in the last moment after I kind of saw my life flashing in front of my eyes and had my conversation with God and stuff like that. And after that, because I was so close to dying, after that I was constantly scared that I was gonna die, that I kind of was on borrowed time. And
Mm.
sometimes even now always in the, well, I'm trying to get over it, but I always like to achieve a lot in a short period of time because I feel like I'm running out of time. And
You know, that could have been why at work I was really trying to achieve a lot.
mm,
I had not really considered that, but you know, in my life, this wasn't the first time my house burned down. So when I was 4 years old, the um, the flat, so it was like a 3-story flat apartment. So each story had a house, and it was across from Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. Um, that house and 3 others on the block burned down one night. Um, and my family, we all escaped. Um, so that was that one was really much traumatic for me because my family could not find housing, and so as children we were shipped off to other places, and my two of my sisters went to my aunt and uncle, which would have been very comfortable for me because they were known people, but one of my sisters and I were sent to a friend of my father's house, and I had no idea who these people were. I was 4, and I think I really got a lifelong sense of not fitting in. I don't belong here.
yeah,
That experience.
yeah. And whenever you're in a fire again, maybe that gets triggered again, the feeling of where am I gonna get, where will I end up? And feeling like a 4-year old again. That is,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, and imagine not being with your parents, like why me feeling could also play a role, like why did they send me away to these strangers? And
Yes, a bit of rejection feeling.
yeah, that is very
At,
traumatic
at
for
an,
you.
yeah, you think about a 4-year-old and how much they need their mom. And
Yeah,
I'm sure it was very traumatic for my mom. I haven't sat down and talked to her about it, but to leave your baby somewhere.
Yes.
Pretty hard.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there is a lot of trauma, and that I'm sure. So you see, childhood traumas get like stored in your body somewhere as a memory, and when you're in a fire again, it might just all like come up again. Wow, and it's amazing that you were the one caring for other people in the shelter while you needed it yourself. Did anybody give you the kind of care that you needed?
I have a wide, like many friends, and friends did step in and give caring. My work set up that we could get free counseling for a while, and they brought psychologists in to work with us as the trauma caregivers, and so um, I did feel pretty supported.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So, what did you have any specific like symptoms after you went through losing your house this last 2 years ago? Like, did you have problems sleeping?
Yes, I had problems sleeping. I had feelings like none of this matters.
That's detachment. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it took 2 weeks for normal stores to open in our community. So um, for a while, we just had to wear, whatever people could give us because we didn't have anything. So once the stores open, I remember going into a department store and standing there. It's November, the rain is going to come. I know I need boots, and I was looking at this vast variety of boots, and I was so overwhelmed. I was like, how do I pick boots? Maybe do I even need boots? Do I even need them? And I ended up turning around and leaving the store, even though I needed boots. But
Wow.
it caused a questioning of, is this a need or just a desire? And when you think it's a need, is it truly a need?
So you
And
started questioning like the basics. It sounds
yeah,
like you were in survival mode.
I was very much I wrote at one point that Maslow's hierarchy of needs was a living and breathing thing for me because I was at the bottom. I needed shelter.
Yes. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, was really tough. So what did you do, or what worked for you to get out of there? And do you also think you were a little bit depressed at that stage?
I think so. Especially when I was questioning how important, what does it matter for me to even be at work? Why am
Yeah.
I there?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
And um, I felt torn in 2 or 3 directions because there was the insurance paperwork, which now when a major disaster happens, I cringe because I know what those people have to do, and it's so hard. Um, if I tell you to go into your kitchen and in your mind go into your kitchen and open one cabinet and list every single thing that's in there,
No way.
and then open the next cabinet and do it, and the next one, and the next one, and every closet, and every under the bed, or
Yeah.
tucked away.
Yeah, it's cruel insurances because sometimes they even ask you for what you call it, receipts of things that you lost. I mean,
Yeah,
honestly,
they can't
houses
do
are
that.
burnt down.
Exactly.
I even
I
kept them.
can't do that. But they did make me fill out the value, current value. So I had to look everything up online and
Mm-hmm.
price it, and then provide a link for the price that I looked up online. What I thought the um, depreciation was. So I had this spreadsheet that had, I don't know, 1,700 entries.
Yeah.
And for each one, I had to fill all that stuff out.
I've done that once when I moved from continents, and when I
Yes.
when I tried to enter like with 10 boxes from South Africa to Belgium, they asked me, you have to say exactly the value of everything that's in the box so we can tax you import duties. And I said, like, I wrote down like used underwear value 0. And it was like, ooh, 10 pages long. I mean, how horrible to have
Yeah.
to go through that. That
And
is,
it is funny because, when you're doing that for a tax purpose, you do say used underwear, and oh, well, I was going to give those clothes away. That pile of clothes that burned, they were going to just be given away. But when it's insurance, it's still your clothes. You haven't given them away, and so you
yeah.
have to list them and value them.
And you have to get new ones.
And
So,
yeah, so you have to buy and you value at the new price of,
yeah,
so 30-year-old jeans
yeah,
are at today's value.
it's very hard to find. Oh, wow, yeah. So we spoke about problem sleeping,
hmm
but do you kind of like wake up in the middle of the night worrying, lying awake? What was your problem with sleep?
I I think it was trying to access mental memories of everything in the house.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, there was that. Got to write that down. um, so I think that was part of it. And part of it, I'm middle aged, so there's the whole middle age wake up at 3 a.m. thing.
Really?
Happens to me. Um, yeah,
I didn't know that was standard.
I don't know. But I just, I remember feeling like disassociated with life
Yeah,
and in general. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's a good sign that something's off. But I mean, fair enough, you went through something serious. Sometimes these things happen, and then what did you do to get out of this place that I assume was not like your happiest period of your life?
I well, I ended up taking a 2 month leave from work so that I could do all that paperwork that I needed to do for insurance. And that was healing because I felt like I was doing what I needed to do
Mm.
instead of doing make work somewhere else. I was doing what I actually, it was my highest and best purpose at that moment.
Yeah, and
Uh,
you were taking care of yourself and what was important for you rather than taking care of other people for a
yeah,
change. Mm.
yeah.
Good.
So the 2 month leave, I did about 6 months of psychotherapy. The psychologist had me read The Dark Night of the Soul.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So did
And
you recognize yourself in that?
um, I did, and I have spent my life being a happy person and positive vibration.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really hard to read a book talking about darkness.
So
And
you didn't really recognize yourself in it, because when you go through depression, that's exactly what it's like, the dark night of the soul. I think it's a good description.
yeah, and I didn't really see when we pulled away from the house the night of the fire, and I knew that the fire was on our block and coming towards our house. I said, "Oh, okay, well, I don't have to clean out those closets." And so,
Positive thinking.
positive spin, right?
Yeah.
But also, I understand, in this dualistic world that there's dark and light in all of us.
Yeah.
And it was really important for me to read that book to recognize and embrace that piece of me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of my healing journey. And then I started doing Ho'oponopono.
Yeah.
And that was I did it for 2 months straight. That was a very powerful way for me to self-heal.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit, because I know what it is, but a lot of people might not know what it is. Can you explain, please, what you do?
Yes. Ho'oponopono is a self-healing. It's just a little mantra that you say, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you." 4 simple statements, and you say it over and over. You can think of a person. If you're in conflict with a person, you can think of that person while you're doing it. And in fact, when I started doing Ho'oponopono, I thought I was healing a conflict. But what I realize and understand now is it was healing me.
Mm-hmm.
And through my healing, the conflict can change.
Yeah. Who did you have a conflict with?
So that's the second part of my story. After the fire, all I had left was my relationship with my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And that relationship was toxic. It did not serve me. And it took me 10 months, but after 10 months after the fire, I left. And so now I've been healing. And actually, that's when I started Ho'oponopono. And yeah, it's been a year now since I left, as of tomorrow. And so it's hard to explain. I have no interest in blame or exposing what went on, but I will just say it was emotionally abusive for me.
Mm-hmm.
And his perspective is probably that I emotionally abused him, because there were behaviors on both sides. And the trauma of leaving that situation, I I was more afraid of being hurt leaving the marriage than I was from being hurt by the fire on the night of the fire.
Mm-hmm.
More fear. I moved into a house with behind 3 coded locked gates, so that I knew I wouldn't encounter him, because I was so afraid of his anger.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And yeah.
So do you think, was your relationship already at that state before the fire, or is it the added stress of losing your house that kind of made you not being able to tolerate it any longer?
I think, yes, the added stress made it. I would say in my marriage, there were probably 5 or 6 times where I wanted to leave very badly
Mm-hmm.
over a 30-year period. So, starting when my 30-year-old son was 3 years old was the first time I thought, I have to get out and I have to get him out.
Mm.
But I have stepdaughters, and um, that meant if I left then they would be um, having solo visitation with someone who could be in a very angry state. And I didn't, I, I couldn't get up and leave them, and I couldn't take them. They're not my kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're his kids. So, um,
Wow,
yeah,
that's quite a responsibility that you had to keep somebody else's children safe. But yeah, that's what you do when you take on the mother job, right? You try and protect everybody.
you do. Yeah, yeah. And so, yes, the fire did change my tolerance level, because even though I had felt the need to leave many times, I didn't have the conviction. I didn't have um, just the overwhelming need to have my own space be me. And yeah, that happened last year.
Mm. Wow. Well done. And I guess all the children were adults by then.
Yes, yeah. And so they, of course, they were traumatized by my decision to leave and the breakup of the family. Um, and we're still working that out now. But um, I at least knew that they were in their own comfort zones where they live. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, wow. So we spoke about problems sleeping,
Hmm.
problems with relationships, which all fits in with the burnout syndrome. Uh,
Yeah.
did you also, like, did you feel very tired?
Oh, yeah. I did. I was exhausted, emotionally exhausted.
Hmm. Emotions can do that. It doesn't have to be physical. I mean, yeah, to have negative, well, I don't know what you went through, but
I had a lot of negative energy around.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, you are a positive person, because what happens to a lot of people when they have burnout and they start getting so exhausted they can't really do all of the jobs that they uh, used to do. Uh,
Hmm.
they don't feel like they have the energy to be perfect at everything anymore. And that's another thing. A lot of people who get burnout are perfectionists, so they start beating themselves up inside their head, like, I'm not good enough
Yes.
thing, like, why can't I do this anymore? I don't deserve to live because I'm not perfect anymore. I'm not a perfect mother anymore. I'm not a perfect wife anymore. I'm not a perfect employee anymore. And then they kind of internally make it worse for themselves. So they need Ho'oponopono, or what you did, because they kind of need to. That's really brilliant. I'm going to add that to my package, because you need to kind of forgive yourself and love
Hmm.
yourself. It is so essential, no matter what circumstances brought you to not like yourself in the moment anymore. It is number one is to put yourself first and to like yourself. And a lot of people, I mean, I'm so glad you stepped out of your job for a while, because often it's like giving, 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 and no recharging and taking care of yourself that puts people in that burnt out situation also. Even though you still stayed in the marriage because you were taking care of the children, So yeah, that is so typical, right? That people do that to take care of other people first.
Yeah,
Even though when you step on any plane, they will tell you put your oxygen mask on first, then
they
put
do.
children and everybody else.
Yeah, it took me a long time to put myself first. And when you talked about kind of beating yourself up because you couldn't do, I experienced that at work and at home because I was like my brain was short circuiting. It just wasn't making the connections that it should.
Yeah,
And I felt like I know this stuff. I should know this stuff. And why can't I do this?
yeah,
So yeah, definite burnout.
yeah. And yeah, I mean, a post-traumatic stress brain does that also, because it's so overwhelmed and it hasn't dealt with all of the traumas yet. It just can't function normally. So, wow, yeah, you described it really well. So, the relationship, and then did you like reconsider what your life purpose was?
Well, yeah, I've done a 180-degree change to my life since the fire. So um, in my marriage, I was emotionally drained, and even though I had dreams of, being the change in the world or um, doing something that really made a difference for people, I never felt like I could.
Mm-hmm.
And once I left the marriage, I freed up so much emotional time and physical time that now I've launched a business to help women accept themselves. And I
Wow.
think from um, for me, that's a way of making sure that women love themselves enough not to get into a situation like I was in my marriage.
That is an amazing purpose. I'm sure a lot of people need to hear that. Wow, well done. The last thing that I teach people who go through burnout is, and you obviously did all of that by yourself, right? So you don't need me, is I think to connect with a higher consciousness or with your higher consciousness or with whatever you believe is out there, the universe is very helpful for people who go through a really dark period of their life because sometimes they feel so alone and abandoned that you kind of need to connect to not only your life purpose but your higher purpose. Have you got any experience with that?
I do. I've always been a spiritual person, and that manifested as, following Christian religion. And so, as soon as um, I w- I was very discouraged in my marriage from seeking God. Um, so after I left, the first thing I did was start going to church regularly. And but also when I was a child, when I was in my high school years, I remember reading Carlos Castaneda. I
Oh,
remember reading um, the Seth Speaks series,
mm,
and so these alternate spiritualities were kind of something that I had investigated when I was younger, and now I'm again investigating. I have a energy healer who has um, cleared a lot of negative blocks, and that has opened a pathway for me to be fully embodied with my soul. And that is the most healing thing you can do, really.
absolutely. There's so many people who forget that part, you know. There are a few burnout doctors are very little in the world, but they never. I mean, yeah, another thing I teach people is like time management. That's something that a lot of people do. They're like at a worldly level, like how to manage your
Yes.
time. But they forget relationships, life purpose, and connecting with a higher consciousness is so important to be a balanced person, and it's so healing. And I'm so glad you found this person to, bring your soul. I always wish everybody would have that soul body connection, because that makes you so whole. And
Yes.
then you don't need an abusive partner to fill that hole, because you're it, right? You're complete.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
complete. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So that was, I think I stumbled on some of the things like Ho'oponopono. I found when I was researching forgiveness, because I wanted to forgive my ex-husband,
Mm-hmm.
and um, that little did I know was such a powerful thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as this spiritual, I signed up for Mind Valley A Fest and attended Mind Valley A Fest in Bali, and that's where I met my energy healer. And so, yeah, really.
By the way, I'm not sure whether you remember, but I remember meeting you there.
You do? Oh my gosh. I
That's
was
why
so wounded.
when I saw you in Portugal, I said like Angela, and you didn't recognize me, but I did. You recognized me.
Wow. Because when I went, I was a wounded animal. I had left my marriage 3 months before I hit Bali, and I was just like, oh, and I had that imposter syndrome. I don't belong here. Um, and at the same time, I felt for the first time I was among people who saw me for who I was.
Mhm.
And that was a really powerful thing for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, see, you ended up in the right place, finding all of the solutions you needed. Is there any advice you could give people, because you went through a lot of things? You went through fire, being in an emotionally abusive relationship for many years, and you like to empower women, right? What is your message to the women out there?
Well, in my Empowering Women series, I start with being able to look in the mirror and like what you see. Because if you're trying to self-love, but you look in the mirror and you say, "Oh, my nose is too big," or ah, that eyebrow is crooked, or whatever thing you choose to
I find
criticize.
it gets better with age.
Yeah. Um, but I challenge my people to look in the mirror and find 5 things they can love about their face,
Yeah.
and really deeply look into their left eye and recite the 5 things that they love. Um, Self-love, what does that really mean? Is it going and getting massages? Is it exercise, eating right, um, spiritually growing? It's all of that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also being able to accept everything about yourself the way it is.
And it's also important to realize you don't have to be perfect at everything.
Yeah.
That was when I had really bad burnout. It was really hard for me trying to I mean, like I was kind of perfect at everything until I had my first child, and then and I had a physical trauma, so I just couldn't walk that fast anymore, and I kind of was slower on my feet, and everything, like I was so hard on myself for
Wow.
not being perfect at everything anymore, and I think I internally just was like punishing myself so badly for a year that I just like destroyed myself from the inside out. And it was, I mean, I had a physical injury, but if I would have self-love, I would just accept that and say like, hey, take it easy, it's okay. You're not that fast anymore, but you still deserve to live. I was that bad that I thought, if I'm not perfect, I don't at everything, at being a mother, a spouse, having a perfectly clean house, being the perfect surgeon, everything, looking like a goddess, walking fast and whatever. You don't deserve to live. It was that bad. And
Wow.
I don't think we are born that way. I think we are actually born as loving ourselves and others unconditionally. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, depending where you grow up, both my parents were Virgos and they were perfectionists.
Yeah.
And my mother worse than my father. Even though I still remember my father correcting my numbers when I wrote down a number, like, this is not a perfectly clear 4. But my mother was even worse, if I came home from school and I had 99% out of, she said, like, what happened to the 1%? Why can't you have
Oh
100%
my gosh.
score? And like, duh, I had to go back to school and say, my mom says it's not good enough, 99%. Where's the 1%? And they said, like, hey, nobody here gets, because nobody is perfect in, that's why we can't give you 100%, even though you're the closest you can get. And like, I was like brought up in this perfectionistic family, and it took me to go through burnout to realize this is not who I am. And this is one of the things that I also coach, because after, I was a very successful vitreoretinal surgeon, but then I experienced burnout, and then I started reconsidering what should I do with my life. I'm still a surgeon now, because it pays better than being a coach. But I love empowering people wherever I go. And one of my mantras is, imperfect action is better than perfect inaction.
That's so
Because
good.
because if you're a perfectionist, you're just paralyzed in fear, do nothing, nothing changes. And every little step, just like us doing this video, it might not be perfect, but at least we're doing something, and we're growing through the experience. In your story, my story, the technology, it's better. It doesn't have to be perfect,
Yeah.
I know, like,
It,
my poster is in mirror writing for you at the moment. I don't know how to do anything about it.
it's actually, it reads right,
Oh, for you
and
it does. For me, it doesn't.
you only see the bottom half of it. So
And like, let's show you some more.
there
For
you
me,
go.
for me, it's mirror writing, actually. So you see, that's something I didn't realize. That's good feedback. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I don't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah, so we've gone over a lot of things here. That's amazing. And I know you wrote, you're part of a book, Ignite.
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
have?
So JB Owen, who I'm sure you know,
Yeah.
has started this wonderful series of books called Ignite Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
And I am one of 35 authors in Ignite Your Life for Women.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about the story of the fire and my decision to leave my husband, but my story is about forgiveness. Forgiveness for the fire, forgiveness for my ex-husband. Um, it was, and it's, I know so many people who say, I want to be a writer. And I say, if you have a story inside, sit down and start writing. Don't
Mm-hmm.
overthink it. Just
Yeah.
start writing. And um, doing that has unleashed a writing bug in me. And so now I'm writing every day.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you know, but my first book was My Surgeon Talks to Angels, a journey
Oh,
from science to faith.
I'm gonna have to go on Amazon and get that book because that that subject is so interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, most people who read it are very, very excited about it. And I don't know whether you can see, then I also co-wrote a book with Jack Canfield, Success Starts Today. Um,
Nice.
Yeah. So actually, I've always been a writer. Even as a small child, I used to write. I found like some old stuff in my parents' house after we were cleaning it out that they kept where when I was only 6 or 7, I like even make drawings with text balloons and whole stories. And yeah, so it's a bit of a challenge because English is not my first language. Therefore, it's easy to read. uh, there's no difficult words in there. So yeah.
You
Oh, I'm
know,
so
but you're not the only author that I know that English isn't their first language and they're writing in English. And for instance, Joanna Mercado Peters was really concerned that she wouldn't be able to get her story written because English is not her first language. And yet she wrote a very profound and beautiful story. And I'm sure once I read your book, I'll be able to say the same thing. so
an
so
easy read.
we self-limit ourselves by saying, "Oh, I don't speak that language. I can't do that." And it's not really true.
Yeah, you're right. And one of the best counter arguments I've had from other people when I apologize for not being as eloquent as people whose mother tongue is English. I sometimes feel embarrassed in comparison to other people about it, and then they say, "What are you worried about? I mean, you probably speak. I speak like 5 languages, and they only speak."
Right, right.
Yeah.
I learned Spanish in high school and I could probably say like 5 phrases and that's all I remember. So, yes, you're way ahead of me.
So put it in perspective. It's good enough, doesn't have to be perfect, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So where can people get your book? Or do you work professionally now, helping women?
I do. So I have a website, Angela Lee, LEGH.com. And I'm actually, so I wrote my book under the pseudonym Angela Lee because I did not want my story to point to my ex or cause him any um, embarrassment. I wanted him to be able to face the world and not be accused. Um, so
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because even in my book, I had an editor taking some things out that they said, "Ooh, that can hurt some people." It was the truth, and she said, "Like, let's take that out. You don't want to get sued."
right, and you're walking this thin line because it is the truth. It's your truth, and at the same time, someone else reading it has their own truth. And so, if you're referencing someone, it's really hard to um, be fair and still relate your truth.
Yeah, it's our experience when we're writing it, right? So
Yes,
it's not abnormal for other people to have another viewpoint because they looked from a different angle.
yes.
So, but it should be from our perspective. This is how we experience things. So, yeah. So angelalee.com, people can find you there.
They can. And then the book, Ignite Your Life for Women, is available on Amazon.
Okay, I'll reference that. Any last words?
Oh, well, I do just want to mention about the book, the structure that JB set up is that each person tells a story of adversity and then provides an action step, a
Ooh,
healing method. And so in my story, it's about using Ho'oponopono, but there's 34 other stories of adversity, overcoming adversity, including illness or um, job burnout, um, some really strong and powerful tools in the book.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'll definitely have to read that one too. Okay, Angela, thank you so much for showing up.
Well, thank you so much and have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
Say hi to all my lovely friends
I
at my
will.
university. I wish I was
Okay. I
there.
wish you could be here too.
Next year, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, wherever it is in the world, right?
Yeah, it's always in a good spot.
It is. Yeah. Have a great day and thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.